Howdy y'all, and welcome back to another story time. Today we're going to be sharing the story The Elderbush in two parts. This will be part one of The Elderbush. The Elderbush was written by Hans Christian Andersen and will be read to you by myself, Tennille Milam. So, part one of The Elderbush. Once upon a time, there was a little boy who had taken a cold. He'd gone out and he'd gotten his feet wet. Though nobody could imagine how it happened, for it was quite dry weather. So his mother undressed him and put him to bed and had the teapot brought in to make him a good cup of elderflower tea. At just that moment, the merry old man who lived at the top of the stairs came in. He lived there all alone, for he had neither wife nor children, but he liked children very much, and he knew so many fairy tales that it was quite delightful. "Now drink your tea," said the boy's mother, "then perhaps you may hear a fairy tale." "But if I had something new to tell," said the old man. "Tell me, how did the child get his feet wet?" "That is the very thing that nobody can make out," said his mother. "Am I to hear a fairy tale or not?" said the little boy. "Well, yes, if you can tell me exactly, for I must know this first. How deep the gutter is in the little street opposite that you pass through going into school." "Well, it's just up to the middle of my boot," said the child, "but then I must go into the deep hole." "Ah, that is where the wet feet came from," said the old man. "Well, I ought now to tell you a story, but I don't know any more." "You can make one up in a moment," said the little boy. "My mother says that all you look at can be turned into a fairy tale, and that you can find a story in everything." "Yes, but such tales and stories are good for nothing. The right sort come of themselves." And they tap on my forehead and they say, "Here we are." "Oh, well, won't there be a tap soon?" asked the little boy. And his mother laughed, and she put some elderflowers in the teapot, and she poured boiling water on them. "Do tell me something. Pray do." "Yes, if a fairy tale would come of its own accord. But they are proud and haughty, and they only come when they choose." "Stop," he said all of a sudden. "I have it. Pay attention now. There's one in the teapot." And the little boy looked at the teapot. The cover rose more and more, and the elderflowers came forth so fresh and white and shot up long branches. Out of the spout even did they spread themselves on all sides and grew larger and larger. It was a splendid elderbush, a whole tree, and it reached onto the very bed and pushed the curtains aside. How it bloomed, and what a fragrance! In the middle of the bush sat a friendly-looking old woman in a most strange dress. It was quite green, like the leaves of the elder, and it was trimmed with large white elderflowers, so that at first one could not tell whether it was a stuff or a natural green with real flowers. "What's that woman's name?" asked the little boy. "The Greeks and Romans," said the old man, "called her a dryad, but we do not understand this. The people who live in the new booths have a much better name for her. They call her Old Granny or Old Nanny, and she it is to whom you are to pay attention. Now listen and look at the beautiful elderbush." Just such another large blooming elder tree stands near the new booths. It grew there in the corner of a miserable little courtyard, and under it sat, of an afternoon, an old seaman and his old wife. They had great-grandchildren and were soon to celebrate the 50th anniversary of their marriage, but they could not exactly recollect the date. And old Granny sat in the tree, and she looked pleased as now. "I know the date," said she, but those below did not hear her, for they were talking about old times. "Yes, can you remember when we were little," said the old seaman, "and we ran and we played all about? It was the very same courtyard where we are now. And we stuck slips in the ground, and we made a garden." "I remember it well," said the old woman. "I remember it quite well. We watered the slips, and one of them was an elderbush, and it took root, and it put forth green shoots, and it grew up to be the large tree under which we old folks are sitting right now." "To be sure," said he. "And there in the corner stood a water pail where I used to swim my boats around." "True," she said, "but first we went to school and we learned somewhat. And then we were confirmed and we both cried, do you remember? And in the afternoon we went up to the round tower and we looked down on all of Copenhagen, and far, far away over the water we went to Fredericksburg, where the king and the queen were sailing about in their splendid barges." "But I had a different sort of sailing," said he, "different to that, later, and that for many years, long way off, on great voyages." "Yes," she said, "many a time I have wept for your sake. I thought you were dead and gone, and you were lying deep in the water, and many a night I got up to see if the wind had not changed, and changed it had, sure enough, but you never came. I remember well, so well, one day when the rain was pouring down. It was pouring in torrents, and the scavengers were before the house where I was in service, and I had come up with the dust, and I remembered I was standing at the door. It was dreadful weather, and I was just standing there, and the postman came and he gave me a letter, and it was from you. What a tour that letter had made. I opened it instantly and read, and I laughed and I wept. I was so happy. In it I read that you were in warm lands where the coffee tree grows. What a blessed land that must be. You related so much. And I saw it all, standing there in the doorway with the dust pail. And then, at the same moment, someone embraced me. "Yes," he said, "but you gave him a good box on his ear that made it tingle." "But I did not know it was you," she said. "You arrived as soon as your letter, and you were so handsome. That you still are. And you had a long yellow silk handkerchief around your neck and a brand new hat on. Oh, you were so dashing. Good heavens, what weather it was, and what a state the street was in. Do you remember?" "Yes," he said. "And then we were married. Do you remember that? And then we had our first little boy, and then Mary, and Nicholas, and then Peter, and Christian." "Yes," she said, "and how they all grew up to be honest people and were beloved by everyone." "And their children also have children," said the old sailor. "Yes, those are our grandchildren, full of strength and vigor. It was, methinks, about this season that we were married." "Yes, this very day is the 50th anniversary of the marriage," said old Granny, sticking her head between the two old people, who thought it was their neighbor who nodded to them. They looked at each other, and they held one another by the hand. Soon after came their children and their grandchildren, for they knew well enough that it was the day of the 50th anniversary, and they had come with their congratulations on that very morning. But the old people had forgotten it, although they were able to remember all that had happened many years ago. And the elderbush sent forth a strong odor in the sun, and it was just about to set, and it shone light right into the old people's faces, and they both looked so rosy-cheeked. And the youngest of the grandchildren danced all around them and called out, quite delighted, that there was to be something very special that evening. They were all to have hot potatoes. And old Nanny looked from in the bush, and she shouted, "Hurrah!" with all the rest. "But that is no fairy tale," said the little boy who was listening to the story. "The thing is, you must understand it," said the narrator. "Let us ask old Nanny." Now that is the end of part 1, and I'll be back with part 2. So until then, thanks, and y'all be sweet.